Really looking forward to this presentation with Samya. Thank you all, everyone for making it. And I'd love to jump into introductions as a very first step. Now it's working. Alrighty, so I have the pleasure of introducing Samya to the group. I see he already has a whole bunch of fans in the audience as well, so a lot of people who already know him. Samya has been in the identity industry for 15 years now. He leads the identity practice at McKinsey. And as you can imagine, McKinsey has a very unique role within the industry, consulting and advising boards. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear what is the board talking about with regards to identity. I think the good news is identity has reached the board level, and Samya will sort of help everyone see what that looks like today.
Thanks, Will. and Will is a good friend. Background of Will is a VC for last 12 years, evaluated thousands of companies, and it was interesting. Identity is one of the favorite areas that he looked at, invested in 50 companies overall, and is the founder, CEO of AK Identity. So I was having interactions, and then we said, okay, there's an opportunity to let's talk about different point of view around where identity is shaping up, where is identity history going, what is the history, and what is the future going towards.
All right, perfect. And so think about this, decades and thousands of data points, try to consolidate down to 20 minutes. So we're going to have fun. Wish us luck. All right, go ahead.
Maybe I'll keep it, not to date myself too much, but maybe a show of hand is like, how many of you have worked on 3270 AS400 screen scraping connectors? What about like Express language, WaveSets, Sun Microsystems? So I think folks will know what I'm talking about. So identity has been interesting as I have been observing it, and at least in my limited career, and before that, talking to people who have been veterans. I think the journey here started with, RACF and AS400s and, all those top secret profiles. I had the privilege of writing a 3270 connector to connect and provision to mainframe. And trust me, it's not fun. And then it came to the 1990s when we're talking about a lot of the directories. A lot of it was about how do I just keep the identities in a unified place in a directory and groups and permissions. And it evolved into the SSO Federation, then into Identity as a Service, MFA, OAuth 2.0, OpenID in like 2010s. 2020, early 2020 at least, now we consider, I guess, 2024. So 2021, I would say in 2020s was a lot of talk about zero trust, passwordless, cloud identity, and passwordless is still a hot topic. So to me, I think looking at and being close to this industry, it was interesting to see this evolution. And the question we always ask is where this is headed. I think this unified identity is where I see a lot of where this story is heading towards, right? It encompasses all personas, forms. We're talking about employees, third parties, machine identities in this space. We're talking about seamless, passwordless, biometric. It's about user experience around it. It's about the intelligence on it. We're talking about dynamic authorization. It has to be data backed. And we're talking about integrated security, like how is identity being more closely integrated with the rest of the security stack? When I started, a lot of the time, identity was part of the CIO organization. It was like somewhere in the head of the infrastructure who leads the identity stack. It became much more closer to cyber and CISO, but still identity was kind of the, it was interesting back in 2011, 15 onwards. It was like the stepchild of the CISO, like not probably the appropriate word, but it's like the neglected child of the CISO, I guess, or the second favorite, which is, there is the rest of the security operations, the rest of the data protection, and then identity was kind of sitting there doing their own thing. It's interesting where we are seeing now is identity becoming the forefront of security. It is the perimeter of the security when organizations are thinking about it. And that becomes the next question how does identity becomes much more as integrated and almost become the pioneer in how do you enable and secure your organization?
So this is where I get to bring my VC perspective into the room. A very unique one. I saw thousands of companies go throughout their life cycle and their journey. And overall, I got to understand how does success happen and why does failure happen as well. Why does a category get created? Why do customers want this? And why do other people acquire that? And so one of the things I want to do is just to show you a view into my brain really quickly, which is a matrix view of the world. Everything has 2 axes, and because I'm not capable of doing 3 axes right now. And the idea is I would love to show you a couple of 2 axes cuts-ups of the identity industry, and so you can start figuring out where do you fit within the ecosystem, or what kind of solutions make sense for you. One thing that I find isn't talked about a lot, and I think that our friends in Gartner could do this in the future as well, is to segment our identity companies by what type of customers they serve. Do they serve small companies, medium-sized companies, or large companies? One of the things a lot of people don't know is architecturally, everything that you build up to serve that kind of customer doesn't scale well when you start working with other types of customers as well. So a small company can never work with an enterprise company as well. A solution meant for enterprise has a very hard time and struggles with serving the midsize as well. And you can sort of see that, for instance, in the SSO world, when we had 2 competitors, right? We had the enterprise competitor of Ping, and then we had the mid-market competitor of Okta, and how they wanted to compete against each other and had different ways of doing that. The other problem that I want to make sure to bring up in this 2-axis view is how many layers of identity we've been creating, right? We used to have 3, directories, PAM, IGA, and now we're more or less creating one solution for each type of access, for each type of identity. And we're creating an 11-layer puzzle and stack that everyone has to figure out, and it requires many different people to be able to run an identity program. And so what I recommend is thinking about things from a slightly different angle, going back to the original 3 with an identity, and looking at it from the end-to-end component. Each solution in identity has a visibility layer, an intelligence layer, and an action layer. Data, analytics, orchestration, workflow kind of situation. And because of how identity was in the past, we sort of forced each vendor to do all 3, end-to-end. But the issue is, when you do that end-to-end component, you start missing out on opportunities instead. And so when we look at a little bit of the past, present, and future that Soumya sort of brought up, in the past we got really good at connectors. In the present, we got really good at authentication/orchestration. But then now we have this auth-z problem to figure out. And we have no way to do auth-z because we don't have data on one place. We have data in 11 different places. And so what the view that I've generated as a VC transitioning to becoming a founder of AK Identity is realizing we have an opportunity to create unified platforms in the visibility layer, an intelligence layer, and an action layer, and of which we're focusing on the data layer. And when you look at the future of everything that we're thinking about, all the innovation, all the things that we want to solve, just in time, zero standing privilege, workload identities, continuous remediation, continuous certification, all of it is fundamentally built off of data. And so this is a nice little quote where we talk about, it's clear our future has become data-driven. It's clear our future is going to be intelligent, seamless, and unified, as Soumya has brought. I want to drop off one more framework for the industry, for the folks in the room, and it's to just show them that an existing model works, exists within the industry, specifically for the data world. The data world has really focused on, if you don't have data, every decision you make is reactive, every decision you make is high risk, and as you refine that data, turn it into information, aggregate that data, add in business logic into it, you can get knowledge, you can start making data-driven decisions. And then lastly, your opportunity is to start using algorithms. We're all wondering, what can AI do for the identity world? It's in the wisdom side, where we can start automating all the different things that we're asking people to do manually today. All right.
Yeah. So one question I was tackling was, how do you apply this at work? So I serve a lot of financial services and healthcare organizations. When they ask about, and identity is becoming a big topic when they ask us and ask about, even at the board level, they're asking, how do you think about identity and access management? The question to us is, how do I communicate the value of identity security? And then what is the risk that we are exposing ourselves to? So one data point around that is, this is a recent market research we did this year. I run one of the McKinsey's cyber market map research, where we survey about 250 CISOs this quarter, earlier this year. One of the questions was around what are the different forms of identities, and not just identity, but also transactions and authentications and applications related to identity. And then what is the expected increase in next 3 years? So the question was, give us in a percentage-wise what's the expected increase in these different shapes and forms or transactions. I pulled in what is increased by, what they reported as increased by 10% in next 3 years. And some of them are like even more than that. So authentication transactions would grow by 20%. Number of transactions to manage identity lifecycle would grow by 14%. Number of applications being in the context of identity is going to be 52% of them reported that they will have 10% plus increase, et cetera, right? So long story short, I think the question here is identity attack surface, not just the number of identities, but the type of identities and the type of transactions and the attack surface around that is increasing. And that's becoming more and more critical for us to consider. Maybe I'll, let's go to this one. In the interest of time, I think we're all convinced that we need identity. We need identity because we are in identity conference here. Unless we want to visit Vegas, I think we are all convinced that we want to come into the conference for identity as well. At least part of the reason is we are here. But how do we go back and communicate the value of identity to our organization stakeholders? Even within McKinsey, when I was talking to my CTO about investing in identity program, the question was, why is it so expensive? Why do we need to put in so much money on identity? And I think it comes down to these 3 pillars, right? It's about revenue, risk, and cost. And to me, when you go and communicate, I think one takeaway for everyone here is when you go and communicate back to your organization around why they need to invest, think about the stakeholder that you're engaging in, and then think about it in these 3 dimensions. Because if there is a digital transformation going on, if there is a product launch that is going on, identity can accelerate that, or at least it can reduce the friction for developers to go and the time to market around it. So to me, when you're communicating the value, think about the top line revenue driver for identity. Think about the risk and compliance angle. Number of banks I serve, one of the CISO's favorite line that I remember is, IAM is one of the gifts that regulators love to keep giving. And I don't know, any number of banks at this point are dealing with IAM matters of MRAs and matters and regulatory issues, right? So what is the cost about that? What is the compliance cost around IAM? And what is the cost of not investing in it? And then the last is around efficiency. We do a lot of the efficiency optimization projects with organizations. And one of the top factors when I look at help desk cost is the number of identity-based account provisioning, deprovisioning, password resets that are happening. So there's an opportunity in just pure automation that you can communicate back. I've skipped over a few things, but I think in the interest of time, so let's just maybe pause here. I think it's questions and anything given the timing we have.
Vlad.
Hear me well?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for presenting it. I want to address the business side of the story. You're talking about authorization. What we don't see a lot is the answer on the question why someone has a certain entitlement, right? That answer cannot come from technology. How do you see us communicating to the business and explaining that we need this and how to create that channel? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, and always that struggle, right? I think it goes back. It's not a simple answer, right? As you know, but I go back to the personas we are talking to. If I'm talking to and because there's the cost involved in this, if you're talking about a large organization, CFO. When we're talking to CFO, I'm talking about efficiency gains because if I just look at my enterprise IAM, the amount of help desk tickets that need to be processed, right? I'll just keep it very purely on my efficiency gains. CISOs will understand the topic I'm talking about. Let's talk about one of the number one top measures that CISO will measure there is the time it takes to respond to an incident, the mean time to detect and mean time to respond to a security incident. If I break down that kill chain, it always comes down to, did I detect the account compromise at quickly enough so that I can remediate it. And what that comes down to is, do I have the right understanding of the identity and the account related to it and the access? So to me, I will put a measurement and metrics around mean time to respond when I'm talking to a CISO around identity. When I'm talking to a CIO, I'm talking about his or her or their number one priority is about cloud transformations, digital transformations, infrastructure, resilience, all of that. One of the top issues I've heard when companies, large organizations are migrating to cloud is about friction that developers are facing in getting right access at the right time. So I would communicate in that perspective. So it's kind of nuanced between the personas in the organization that you are talking to and who is the stakeholder who will make the decisions and influence the decision.
Oh, thank you so much.
So when you talk about mid-size and like enterprise level, is there like a number that justifies whether or not you fall in one of those two categories? Because like we're looking to go to like an actual true IGA and like not an actual IGA program, and we don't have one right now. So it's like, how do I justify? Am I mid-size? Am I enterprise? What solutions I need?
So everyone has a slightly different definition, right? And so for me, I like to give a very simple answer that is not perfect, but it is an answer, right? Factors of 10. So over 10,000, large, between 1,000 and 10,000, mid, under 1,000, small.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I'll take a slightly different view.
Yes.
I think the boundaries around mid-size and enterprise, in my opinion, is blurring. It's around the complexity of the situation and the security posture that you have that I'm seeing. So a lot of the tech companies that are mid-size are investing in strong IGA capabilities and IAM capabilities because for them, once the security compromise and the complexity on the tech is pretty critical. I'm seeing a lot of utilities, manufacturing, they are moving to a stronger IAM postures because of the non-human accounts. The OT security environment also has identity factors that are all coming in here. So traditionally, I kind of see this evolving a little bit of that blurring between what a mid-size versus the enterprise. To me, biggest opportunity right now is in the mid-size companies. From a provider standpoint, is to go and target those, have those conversations because that's an underserved market. And a lot of them are now moving to SaaS and cloud environments where the identity becomes a much more important security perimeter and a control point versus traditional large enterprises that are still having network security perimeters that they can point to.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the top 5 to 10 metrics that you would recommend to showcase your goals? How's your IAM program running?
Yeah, great question. I never got asked that question. We call the studies like the McKinsey studies we do. It's a tough one, to be honest, because for the board, when we are when we are communicating, and there's a number of boards that I go up and we talk about it. We hardly talk about identity metrics because we kind of lose them when we go into and talk about number of applications, number of identities, and all that, right? So typically, I would go with the key risk indicators. It will be about KRIs that the enterprise risk management has established around the data risk posture that they have. They will have risk indicators around breach compromise and some of the KRIs around that. I will have risk indicators around the attack surface coverage that they would have. But very high level risk indicators, what I would do, what I have seen. And then KPIs and some of the other OKRs from IAM, I would keep it almost like a supporting facts. But at the board level, more than 3 to 5 KRIs, beyond that, we'll lose the audience. They just,
one of the things I think is really unique and a plug for Gartner as well is they're actually doing a lot of research around ODMs, what they call KPIs, outcome-driven metrics. And outcome-driven metrics are nice because they're sort of obvious, right? Like percentage of privileged accounts that have MFA turned on, you sort of want that to be the highest number possible. Number of days to onboard a new user, you want that number to be as small as possible as well. And so it gives you very logical, obvious things that you can present to any stakeholder where they can understand, this should be good, this should be bad.
Yeah. I'll share with you, I did a paper actually on the board metrics and what is reported. By the way, it's not standardized. It came from 30 metrics in one financial services to 3 metrics in other financial services. This was in the context of cybersecurity. So it's kind of still unfortunately unstructured in terms of what the board is looking at in terms of metric-wise. The only second thing I'll point out is, at least I serve a lot of the Fortune 50 and 100 companies. Board is not just one board. They will have subcommittees. So we have technology risk committee and some of the information security review committees. So sometimes, depending on the subcommittee that is reported up to, we'll look at different metrics data points there. Yeah.
I have more of a technical question. Like we have workforce identity and then customer. Where does the vendor and supplier fall in? And what is the norm you see when you're helping other organizations?
I mean, I can
I'll go second.
take my view from the industry. I think it's the boundaries are blurring very quickly. I think workforce vendors, partners are getting much more closer together. The IAM head and the CISOs and the cyber heads are also looking at it more closely together. The reason being, there's the partners kind of over jump into being the workforce. Sometimes those delineations are not always clear. Customers, I had conversations, but still out there. I haven't seen like a single persona across customers, workforce and vendors and business partners. But the business partners and workforce are getting much more closer to each other, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Yeah, third-party risk. Similar perspective. I think the way you manage customer identities and anything workforce or workload related is very different. And even when you think about auditors, for example, right, they audit those data sources very differently as well. And so I think there's a very clean separation between two. And I do think identity is decently binary, it's one or the other. But the opportunity we have in the workforce, workload, vendor, partner, all that is, I think, combining together. And it's possible because of these unified layers that we describe in the visibility, intelligence, and action matrix.
You presented sort of a very interesting compilation of the three sort of lanes within IAM. So that was pretty intriguing. Do you have anything a little deeper published somewhere? Or I'd love to find out more. Is there a way to get
Yeah. So first of all, I have to give credit to a friend for developing the visibility, intelligence, and action framework. When you look at it, it's very simple and easy to understand. But in terms of creating the very amazing acronym VIA, I have to give that credit to Nathan Harris at Gartner. In terms of double clicking on it, there's so much to go on all of this. Whenever I describe this visibility, intelligence, action, I always have all these slashes. Visibility, /connectors, /data, /normalization, data engineering, /pipeline, and intelligence, you have all these slashes as well. And so there is a lot of room to better define what visibility, intelligence, and action means. And we will be writing that in a blog over time.
Any thoughts on impact of human labor or time taken by or money spent on human labor on doing these three answers?
Yes. So what I like to say, and you can see I love frameworks. The more you can frame up the world, the happier I will be. So the way that I view the identity world today is we're still in the spreadsheet world. Like when you really want to do analytics, CSV files, munging together in Excel. We're not yet at the database world. We're not yet at the data lake or data warehouse world. We're not yet at the edge compute, multi-party compute world as well. And so when I think about all the time and money spent, it's because we're trying to force spreadsheets to do our bidding kind of situation. And so for me, a lot of that is related to the intelligence component or the visibility component. The other place where you start bringing a lot of vendors and third parties, they tend to be very connector driven or automation driven, right? So a connector to this legacy application or yet another application you put behind SSO, for example, as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know we have lots of hands, but I'm sorry.
I was going to add one point is the
please.
emergence of Gen AI could be an interesting angle of how we are looking at some of the services part of it. I think there's an opportunity to really accelerate, or augment or even replace some of the human components in there.
Perfect. I think they've done a really good job of giving us the handle. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.